Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the A segment of episode 59 of the Loud House, Fandom Pains. We begin this segment at the Loud House, where we see Lucy is preparing to watch the season premiere for Vampires of Melancholia with her Edwin statue. Suddenly, Lori and Leni arrive, much to Lucy's surprise. At first, Lucy thinks Lori and Leni are confused and reminds them that the Dreamboat airs on Monday nights, but Lori and Leni clarify that they are here to watch Vampires of Melancholia. They call the show VOM for short, much to Lucy's frustration. Lucy then questions why Lori and Leni are suddenly interested in Vampires of Melancholia, and she receives her answer in the form of a new character arriving in this episode of Vampires of Melancholia. The character's name is Tristan, and he's played by the actor Blake Bradley. Lori and Leni are big fans of Blake Bradley. The episode of Vampires of Melancholia reveal that Tristan is the great-great-great-great-grand-nephew of Edwin. Over the course of this Vampires of Melancholia episode, Lucy becomes progressively more irritated by Lori and Leni's questions. She comments along the lines about how Lori and Leni would know the answer to these questions if they followed along with earlier episodes and earlier seasons of Vampires of Melancholia. And Lucy is especially irritated about how Lori and Leni don't know who Edwin and Griselda are, since Edwin and Griselda are the main characters of Vampires of Melancholia. So eventually the episode of Vampires of Melancholia ends, and Lori and Leni really enjoyed the episode. They say that they want to make it a new Friday night tradition where they watch Vampires of Melancholia with Lucy. So Lori and Leni head upstairs, and Lucy talks to her Edwin statue. She says that she needs to think of a way to get Lori and Leni to stop watching Vampires of Melancholia. So a week passes by. Lori and Leni are looking forward to the next episode of Vampires of Melancholia, and Lucy has come up with a plan to try and get Lori and Leni to stop watching the show. Lucy's plan is that she claims that they need to partake in some pre-show rituals. Lucy says that these pre-show rituals are how fans get into vampire mode, in Lucy's words. So the first of these pre-show rituals is Lucy convincing Lori and Leni that they need to have a vampire makeover. Leni thinks that the vampire look is rather sickly looking, but Lori responds that they can think of this to be good makeover practice. Yes, Lori says that this will make good makeover practice. And so Lori and Leni really do get into the vampire makeover. They even use some Halloween props in order to add to the vampire makeover. So the next of these pre-show rituals is Lucy convincing Lori and Leni that they need to hang upside down like a bat. Lucy says that this is how fans see the world from a vampire's perspective. So a pole is now hanging towards the top of a doorway. That's how Lori, Leni, and Lucy are hanging upside down. Lori and Leni are starting to get headaches from hanging upside down, but they're facing the living room while they're hanging upside down, and Lori and Leni can see underneath the couch, and they find several items that they've been missing for a while underneath the couch. So Lori and Leni are actually on board with the hanging upside down pre-show ritual, because it means they can find lost items. So the next of these pre-show rituals is Lucy convincing, the next of these pre-show rituals is Lucy convincing Lori and Lenny that they need to watch the show while sitting in coffins. Lucy says that fans do this to watch the show the way vampires would watch the show. And Lori and Lenny do find Lori and Lenny find sitting in the coffins to be uncomfortable, but Lenny comes up with a solution. Lenny decides that they can use decorative throw pillows to make sitting in the coffins more comfortable, and Lori gets the idea that they can use the coffin lids, Lori comes up with the idea that the coffin lids can be a TV tray. So Lucy comes up with one last pre-show ritual. Lucy makes some homemade blood, and she says that fans must toast every new episode with a glass of this homemade blood. Lori and Lenny do find the homemade blood to be unsettling, but Lori then comes up with a solution. Lori makes some beet smoothies and comments about how the beet smoothies do look like the homemade blood, but adds that they're delicious. So yes, Lori and Lenny use the beet smoothies to go along with the homemade blood pre-show ritual. And Lucy is disappointed that all of her pre-show rituals didn't succeed at getting Lori and Lenny to stop watching the show. So during the Vampires of Melancholia episode, Edwin is writing a letter to Griselda. Griselda is traveling the underworld right now, and eventually Edwin notices that Tristan has created a home gym within the castle, and Edwin is growing progressively more and more irritated by Tristan's antics. And yes, Lori and Lenny are enjoying the episode still, and eventually, yes, by the end, time passes by, and this episode of Vampires of Melancholia ends. So Lori and Lenny head upstairs after the episode ends, and Lucy talks to her Edwin statue once again. Lucy says that, Lucy figures that Lori and Lenny will continue to watch the show as long as Tristan is on the show. So Lucy figures that the only way to go about this is to get Tristan off of the show. So another day shows up, and we're at Royal Woods Elementary School. Lucy is holding an emergency meeting with the Young Morticians Club, and Lucy checks to make sure that the other Mortician Club members are fans of Vampires of Melancholia. Haiku speaks on behalf of the other members. Haiku is the first one to talk. Haiku clarifies that they are fans, but they are not happy about Tristan joining the cast. And Haiku says that they haven't watched the show since... Haiku says that they haven't watched the show since Tristan joined the cast, and the other Mortician Club members agree with what Haiku says. So Lucy says that they should all put their efforts together, Lucy says that they should all work together in order to try and get Tristan off of the show. So yes, the next scene shows Lucy, Haiku, and the other Mortician Club members going door to door and requesting that different citizens sign a petition to remove Blake Bradley from Vampires of Melancholia. Eventually, the Mortician Club members all regroup, and they find out that they were able to acquire a total of 45 signatures. Oh, and they also acquired 15 pieces of candy because some of the citizens thought that they were trick-or-treaters. Lucy and Haiku comment that this is an example of goth perks. That's what they call it. So back at Royal Woods Elementary School, the Mortician Club members all wrote protest letters to the studio. Haiku's protest letter is in the form of a poem. And Lucy figures that it'll take too long if they send the letters to the post office. So Lucy has a different way. Lucy has a different idea for how they can send the protest letters to the studio. We see that Lucy, Haiku, and the other Mortician Club members have tied these protest letters to Fanes and several other bats. They intend to have the bats deliver the protest letters to the studio. So the bats fly off after the letters have been tied to them. So eventually the next Friday rolls around, which means the next episode of Vampires of Melancholia will be airing. So Lucy talks to her Edwin statue once again and says that she hopes that the protests were successful. Lori and Lenny arrive in the living room, and they also have they've also made some custom shirts. Lori and Lenny are wearing custom shirts that say Team Tristan, but they also reveal that they made some custom shirts for Lucy and her Edwin statue that say Team Edwin. And Lucy is surprised by this, but she thanks Lori and Lenny all the same for these custom shirts. So in this episode of Vampires of Melancholia, Edwin and Tristan are having dinner right now, and Edwin continues to become irritated by Tristan's antics, and at one point Tristan suggests that they perform a post-meal workout after they finish dinner. Edwin, though, suggests that they walk along the cliffs of Melancholia. The cliffs are supposed to be very misty and slippery. So yes, Tristan and Edwin head to one of these cliffs, and Tristan decides that he wants to take a selfie, but Tristan is backing up while he's trying to take the selfie, and Tristan doesn't see that he's walking closer to the edge of the cliff. And eventually, Tristan falls off the cliff. Tristan falls off the cliff. And Edwin is quite pleased that Tristan has met his end. Lori and Lenny are shocked that Tristan has met his end, and they actually decide that they can't continue to watch the episode. So they head upstairs, apologizing to Lucy that they can't continue to watch the episode. And Lucy talks to her Edwin statue once again, figuring that the protests were successful, and she decides to celebrate with some early Halloween candy. So another week passes by, which means another episode of Vampires of Melancholia is about to begin. And Lucy is pleased that she can finally watch the episode without Lori and Lenny. But during this episode of Vampires of Melancholia, Edwin is actually starting to miss Tristan. Edwin comments about how Tristan did get on his nerves at times, but he now realizes that Tristan had good intentions, and he just wanted to spend some time with his family. And Edwin admits that he feels guilty for playing a role in Tristan meeting his end. Lucy is starting to feel regretful about her. Yes, Lucy is starting to feel regretful about trying to get Lori and Lenny to stop watching Vampires of Melancholia. Edwin apologizes to Tristan, hoping that Tristan can forgive him, even though Tristan is not present right now. And Lucy decides that even though Tristan is not part of the show anymore, it's not too late for Lori and Lenny to continue to watch the show with her. So Lucy goes up to Lori and Lenny's room, but Lori and Lenny are nowhere to be found. Lucy fears that she's too late, but when Lucy returns to the first floor, she sees Lori and Lenny entering the Loud house through the front door. And And Lucy is pleased to see Lori and Leni, and she requests if they would watch Vampires of Melancholia with her. She figures that they probably wouldn't want to now that Tristan has met his end, but Lucy admits that she enjoyed spending time with Lori and Leni. Lori and Leni assure Lucy that they will join her in watching Vampires of Melancholia. They admit that Tristan was the reason for why they started to watch Vampires of Melancholia in the first place, but the reason why they are continuing, the reason why they decided to continue to watch Vampires of Melancholia is because they enjoyed spending time with Lucy. And Leni also reveals that they went to the grocery store to get some vampire-themed snacks for this particular episode. Leni then inquires if garlic bread is appropriate for a vampire-themed show. Lucy is about to clarify that garlic and vampires don't go well together, but decides not to bother. She says that it's perfect and encourages Lori and Leni to hurry up. That's right, yes, Lucy paused. Yes, earlier Lucy paused the episode when she went to go find Lori and Leni, so that's why they didn't miss any more of the episode. So yes, Lori, Leni, and Lucy are now all watching the Vampires of Melancholia episode. And eventually there's a knock at the door of Edwin's castle. Edwin wonders who could be at the door, and when he opens the door, he sees both Griselda and Tristan, who's now a vampire. Griselda says that she ran into Tristan in the underworld, and she says that she was able to easily bring Tristan back with her after she left the underworld. And Griselda reveals that she's the reason why Tristan is now a vampire. And Lori and Leni are happy that Tristan is back on the show, or that Tristan will be staying on the show. Yes, Lori and Leni are pleased to see that Tristan will be staying on the show. Lucy talks to her Edwin statue once again, and Lucy realizes that the protests didn't actually affect the show. But she says that she's glad that ended up being the case, because that means Lori and Leni Lori and Leni are happy now that Tristan is still a part of the show, but now he's a vampire. And Leni comments about how Tristan seems cuter in vampire form, and Lucy figures it's probably the Fanes. So Lori, Leni, and Lucy are all smiling, they're all hugging, and they're having a good time while they watch the Vampires of Melancholia episode. And that is how we end this segment. So this segment features Lucy to be the viewpoint character. Yes, Lori, Leni, and Lucy could all be considered the spotlight characters, while Lucy is the viewpoint character in particular. And this segment stands out because this is the second segment that Lincoln is absent in, not counting the title card, of course. But yes, the first time Lincoln was absent was in the segment Net Gains. But in Net Gains, although Lincoln didn't appear in Net Gains, he still was acknowledged in some way, or he was mentioned in some way. In Net Gains, Flip called Lynn Lincoln's sister at one point. But in this segment, Lincoln doesn't even get mentioned. So not only is Lincoln absent, but he's not mentioned at all throughout the course of the segment itself. Again, not counting the title card. So yes, Lori, Leni, and Lucy were the main focus for this particular segment. And I have brought it up before, I'm okay with Lincoln taking a back seat every now and then, or Lincoln not appearing in every entry, because this means we get to see other characters get their time to shine, and we get to see some interactions that we might not usually get to see. And this was an example in this segment. Now, Lori and Leni actually do interact with each other quite a bit, but Lucy is the Loud sister that they don't usually interact with. Usually while we do see the Loud siblings interacting in the more collective, bigger groups, we don't get to see them interacting in smaller groups. not necessarily one-on-one, but in this case, it was three of the Loud sisters interacting with each other. And Lori and Leni do usually have one-on-one time with each other, but they don't usually interact with just Lucy without the other Loud siblings present either. So that's something that I thought was cool about this segment. We get to see Lucy interacting with Lori and Leni, two of the Loud sisters that Lucy doesn't usually interact with within smaller groups, not counting the bigger groups that include all the Loud siblings. So I thought that was pretty cool. And this segment also, this segment also featured the return of Haiku, one of the four friends of the Loud sisters that are also within Lincoln's age group, one of the four Lincoln-aged friends of the Loud sisters that appeared in Dance Dance Resolution. And this segment also continued to show a detail about Haiku and Lucy. Back in Season 2, Lucy and Haiku were both shown to be members of the Young Morticians Club. And yes, this was brought up again in this segment. Lucy and Haiku are members of the Morticians Club, and we do get to see the other members of the Mortician Club. Now, interestingly enough, as of the recording of this video, recent supplementary material actually revealed the name of the other Mortician Club members. It was a comic or graphic novel, to be more specific. But yes, the other Mortician Club members' names were revealed in this supplementary material. So for anyone who's curious, the other Mortician Club members' names are Morpheus, Persephone, Dante, Bertrand, and Boris. Those are the other Mortician Club members besides Lucy and Haiku, for anyone who's curious. So, yes, so like I said, I did appreciate the return of the Mortician Club members, since they're characters that are featured in Lucy's life outside of the Loud family. And the supplementary material that featured them was also greatly appreciated too. That highlights why I'm okay with other characters besides Lincoln getting the spotlight every now and then, or being the viewpoint characters every now and then, because it means we have a chance to see more of their lives outside of the Loud family. And the Mortician Club members are a great example of that in Lucy's case, and Haiku in particular too. I have acknowledged before that the Lincoln-aged friends of the Loud sisters from Dance Dance Resolution are probably some of my favorite minor characters in the show, and I do hope that they can appear more often in the future, because I do think there's a lot of potential for those characters. Now, some fans though, the main complaint, or the main grievance, or the main voice of, or the main point of objection against seeing the Lincoln-aged friends of the Loud sisters that I usually hear from some fans is that they're just Lincoln-aged versions of the Loud sisters that they're friends with. Like in Haiku's case, some fans say that Haiku is just Lincoln-aged Lucy, essentially. But the reason why I think they should appear more often is because more screen time means there's a chance for them to grow beyond just being Lincoln-aged versions of the Loud sisters that they're friends with. If they have more screen time, that helps to make them that helps to give them a chance to become their own characters. To give you an example, this is sort of like the situation with the Mario brothers. Luigi was initially just Green Mario when he first was created, but over the course of time, Luigi started to become more distinct from Mario. There actually is, this goes along with the trope divergent character evolution, which also has been called Luigiification. So, yes, I'm on board with Tabby, Giggles, Polly Payne, and Haiku having more appearances in the future, because it gives them the potential to have Luigiification to become more distinct from the from the Loud sisters that they're friends with. And I will go ahead and mention this: Haiku does have at least 2 more appearances in season 3. off the top of my head. Maybe she has another cameo here or there. I'll have to have my memory refreshed while I rewatch these entries for season 3, but off the top of my head, I do remember Haiku having at least 2 more appearances. So it does look like Haiku gradually became more and more prevalent over the course of the series. So I am glad that Haiku is getting more appearances. I'm just hoping that Tabby Giggles and Polly Payne can also have more appearances too in the later seasons, because like I said, I do think they're very likable characters, and I do think there's potential for them, and more screen time can give them the chance to become more than just being Lincoln-aged versions of the Loud sisters that they're friends with. So, yes, while the Morticians Club does appear in this segment, most of the segment is focusing on Lucy, on Lori and Leni becoming fans of vampires of Melancholia. And at first, Lucy is initially irritated about this, since Lori and Leni don't really know the full show. I'm sure some fans probably would be reminded of certain situations, or yes, I'm sure some viewers are probably reminded, or the scene where Lucy is getting irritated at Lori and Leni's questions and commenting along the lines about how you'd know the answer if you followed along earlier. Yes, some viewers probably were reminded of that, whether they were the one who was inquiring about certain details, or whether they're the individual who's saying that those answers would be obvious to someone who followed along earlier. Some viewers have said they've been in both positions, or they've been in one of those positions in those situations. And in my case, I definitely remember those sort of things happening in my own real life experiences, but I'm much more sympathetic about people that might be entering a show without having the full context for what's going on. Yes, I'm much more sympathetic about that sort of thing. I don't usually lose my temper about that, because I understand not everyone starts a show right from the beginning, or starts a franchise right from the beginning. And actually, yes, that kind of highlights something I do with these recap and thoughts videos. Sometimes I might mention a detail that was already mentioned in an earlier entry, and this usually happens with serialized elements, but I might quickly bring up certain details that were addressed in earlier entries, just because I'm trying to be mindful that some individuals, for all I know, any of these videos on the channel could be someone's first video. They might not always start from the beginning, so I do try to at least bring up certain details that I feel are relevant to help catch certain viewers up to speed if they haven't seen some of the other videos. So that actually brought something to mind to me. Yes, that brought my sympathy towards not everyone starting a show or a book series or a movie series or a franchise overall from the beginning and being confused because they didn't start from the beginning. My sympathy towards those viewers is actually it helps me with how I style these videos on the channel, actually. So that reminded me of that. Now, I guess another detail about the segment title, Fandom Pains, and the way how Lucy was irritated about the way Lori and Leni were fans of Vampires of Melancholia. That actually reminds me of something else that's also quite prevalent in real life. How fandoms can always have, how fandoms can have some unflattering reputations with some people. Now, yes, there are some fandoms can be quite divided. Yes, there are some fandoms that are very divided, and sometimes certain fans of a common franchise can have tension with each other. Yes, there are some fans of the same franchise that can have tension with other fans because of divided opinions or divided feelings on certain topics of the fandom. Like I guess anime would be a good example. Like, yes, for anime, there are some fans that prefer dubbed versions of animes, and there are some fans that prefer subbed versions of animes. And it's cool if people like dubs or subs. The problem is more how some fans can get needlessly antagonistic and yes, act like they're all high and mighty or superior just because of their preferences with watching anime. And it's not just anime either. Like, some people might prefer a movie adaptation over a book version, and some fans can have conflicts over that. And even yes, fans of different characters, fans of certain entries or plot lines or seasons or storylines or sagas. Yes, there can be tension all around. And sometimes vocal minority of fans, extremists. Yes, some vocal minority fans can be extremists, and because they're so loud, though, some people might take the extremists to be all the fans, even though ideally one wouldn't go making sweeping generalizations about an entire group because of the actions of extremists, but unfortunately that does happen. I do recall some people I know in real life that say that they don't want to give certain shows a chance, or they don't like a certain show without actually watching the show itself, but they say they don't like the show because of extremist fans, saying that they ruined the experience for them. And this actually reminds me of a mindset that I have. I disagree with the whole disliking a show or disliking a franchise or disliking a work of fiction just because of extremist fans. I feel that that's not an ideal way to go about. I guess you could say I feel that one shouldn't let how extremist fans act affect their enjoyment of a work of fiction. To give you an idea of what I'm trying to say, there is a saying about how one should separate the art from the artist. Just because someone might enjoy an art doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with the artist about certain things. Or, the whole idea of separating the art from the artist, I can attest to following that mentality myself. There are certain cases where I might enjoy an art, but I strongly disagree with the artist about certain things, but I can still enjoy the art for what it is. And that's a similar case with what I'm trying to get at here. A similar situation is just as you should separate the art from the artist, one should separate the fandom from the art too. I believe that one should just enjoy the art on its own merits. Don't let outside influences affect your enjoyment of the art. That's how I approach it. So if I like a show, or if I like a movie or a video game or a book or something like that, it's pretty much because of the work of fiction itself. I really try not to let the extremist fans ruin the experience for me, and that's because the truth of the matter is every fandom is going to have its extremists, its vocal minorities that might take the franchise too seriously, they take the work of fiction too seriously, or they kind of they don't exactly act in a cordial manner. Every fandom has those extremists, unfortunately. So I've come to accept that I should look at the art for its own merits and not let outside influences affect my enjoyment of the art itself. And I do encourage others to also have that mentality too. Separate the art from the artist, separate the art from the fandom. That's I think that others will have a greater time enjoying art if they separate it from the artist and the fandom. So that's kind of what it reminded me of too. I know that was a bit of a tangent, but yes, Lucy not liking how certain fans acted, or how Lori and Lenny acted, kind of did remind me of how some fans get annoyed by other fans, or some people get irritated about certain fans, and they decide to not give the work of fiction a chance just because of extremist fans. And I think that unfortunately limits the possibility of new works of fiction to enjoy. So yeah, but in the end, yes, the main point for the segment though was about having similar interests with your family members and having some common ground where you can watch something with your family members, and yeah, that was pretty heartwarming. Lori and Lenny do acknowledge that Blake Bradley, the actor playing Tristan, was the reason why they got into the show, but they decided to stick around with the show because they enjoyed spending time with Lucy, which was really heartwarming. And that reminds me of some other that does remind me of some cases in real life. Some relatives of mine and even some friends of mine might not have had much interest in a show I liked initially, but eventually something came around that they decided, okay, I'll give this a chance, and they actually did come around to enjoying the show, and now they know quite a bit about the show like I do, and I thought that was really nice. Sometimes, yes, certain elements of a show can lead to new fans being drawn in, and this also actually reminds me of another detail that happens that I'm not really a big fan of. There are some fans that can be what you call gatekeepers. Essentially, they're the kind of fans that act like only these people can enjoy the show. How dare anyone else enjoy the show? Or they try to prevent others from enjoying the show just because they don't fit the gatekeeper's idea of what a fan should be. So, yeah, I find those gatekeeper sort of fans to be very irritating, and yeah, I think that if certain things draw more viewers in, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I've always been someone who believes that execution is the key. So yeah, that's usually my response to most things. If it's well executed, I welcome it. But yeah, this insistence that some fans try to keep out potential new fans, yeah, I don't agree with that mentality. But otherwise, yeah, I did like how Lucy eventually did realize that, yes, while Lucy initially acted like a gatekeeper sort of fan, she did eventually realize the error of her ways and realize that it was nice to have family members to watch the show with. So I thought that was pretty heartwarming how they did have that lesson about how it's nice to have interests that you share with your relatives. And yes, we do get to meet another celebrity character. Well, we don't actually meet the character himself. We just see him on TV in the show. So Blake Bradley, yes, Blake Bradley is another celebrity character, and who knows if he will appear in person in a future entry or not. I guess we'll just have to play the waiting game and see. And oh, for anyone who is curious, yes, the credits for the Vampires of Melancholia episode do reveal some other in-universe actor names. Like Edwin's in-universe actor's name is Edward Moore, to name an example. So for any fans that are curious, that's a little Easter egg if you pause the segment at the right moment and look at the credits for the Vampires of Melancholia episode. But otherwise, I'd say that's probably about it for this particular segment. So, like I said, I did like how this episode featured Lucy interacting with Lori and Lenny, two of the Loud sisters that she doesn't usually interact with outside of larger groups or like the overall Loud siblings group. And I also did appreciate the return of Haiku and the other Mortician Club members for giving us a little more insight on Lucy's life outside of the Loud family. And I did also appreciate the lesson about the lesson of the segment about how sometimes some people might get into a work of fiction later on because of some new element that arrives, but that doesn't mean that they can't grow to enjoy the work of fiction overall. And I also did think that this segment was a good lesson about how the gatekeeping style of fans, or yes, the type of fans that try to be gatekeepers for the work of fiction, how that can be a very problematic behavior. So yeah, I did like this segment's lessons, and I did like seeing a little more insight on interactions for Lucy, not just with certain Loud sisters, but with some friends of hers outside of her family life. And yeah, it was cool that we got to learn a little bit more about one of the Loud siblings' interests. In this case, Lucy's interest in vampires of Melancholia, and how Lori and Lenny eventually became fans of the show too. So, otherwise, I'd say that's about it. As of this video, we've now discussed the A segment for episode 59 of The Loud House on this channel. Take care, and until next time.